started on a Friday evening. One of those ordinary days that doesn't hint at anything unraveling. The air outside still held a late summer warmth, and the drive home had been unusually smooth. No traffic, no honking, just silence and sunset. I even stopped to pick up Ty from that place Emily liked, thinking maybe we could have a normal night. Laugh about something dumb on TV. Fall asleep without the quiet tension that had been hanging between us lately. I was hopeful, not for anything big, just something easy. But the moment I walked through the front door, that quiet kind of hope collapsed. It wasn't one thing. It was everything all at once. First, the shoes. Right by the entryway. Emily's black heels, the ones with the red sole she rarely wore, were set neatly next to a pair of men's dress shoes. Brown leather, size too large to be mine. Worn but cared for. I stared at them longer than I probably should have. Something about them didn't sit right. Not just that they were unfamiliar, but that they didn't belong. At all. Next, the smell. The house didn't smell like home. It smelled like someone had sprayed lavender oil in a panic, trying to bury something. Beneath that, the faint but unmistakable scent of red wine lingered. Not opened wine, but already poured wine. Warm. Breathed into. Shared. Then the music. Soft jazz hummed from the Bluetooth speaker we kept in the kitchen, the kind of music that either plays in a spa or on a date. It wasn't something Emily usually listened to unless she was trying to set a mood, or, in this case, trying to reset one. As I stepped further into the house, I saw her, sitting at the dining room table, perfectly lit by the golden hour spilling through the window. She looked surprised for half a second. A flicker. Then her expression settled into something so smooth, so practiced, it actually chilled me. "Hey!" she said, like she was happy to see me, like everything was fine. "You're home early." I gave a half smile and held up the takeout bag. Figured I'd beat the rush. "Got your favorite." She closed her laptop slowly, carefully, like she didn't want to seem too eager, or maybe like she was trying to cover what was on the screen without making it obvious. The screen dimmed to black. Her fingers hovered over it for just a beat too long. "Thanks, babe," she said. "That's sweet. I was just finishing up a meeting with Linda and her husband. They swung by to talk about the fundraiser." I glanced around. 2 glasses of wine sat on the table. One half full, lipstick on the rim. That muted plum color she always wore when she was dressing to impress. The other glass still carried wisps of warmth, as if it had only just been set down. There were 2 seats pulled out, facing each other. No photos, no brochures, no notepads, no signs of any meeting. Still, she said it like it was nothing, as if the presence of an unfamiliar pair of shoes, 2 wine glasses, and her sudden jump to close a laptop didn't suggest anything out of place. "Linda and Rob?" I asked, doing my best to sound casual. She nodded once. "Yeah, they didn't stay long. Just stopped by to go over a few layout options. You know how last minute she gets with these events." I hummed in agreement, pretending to let it go. My tone even, my face unreadable. But inside something began to split. Because I had helped Rob, that very morning, pack up his luggage for a work trip. A 4-day corporate retreat in Seattle. Early flight. He'd asked if I had any headphones he could borrow. We stood in his driveway at 6 a.m. while he joked about sleeping through the conference panels and surviving off bad hotel coffee. And now Emily was telling me that he and his wife had just swung by to chat over wine? I didn't call her out. Not right away. Not then. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, slowly unpacked the food, and placed the containers on the counter. I felt her watching me, like she was checking to see if I'd caught something, if I'd noticed the shoes, the music, the second glass. But I didn't give her anything to read. Just silence. She walked over, leaned against the doorway, arms folded, trying to look casual. "How was work?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "Quiet." She nodded. "That's good. Mine was busy." Busy, right? The word hung in the air, hollow. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, then back to me, almost like she was hoping I'd go shower, or disappear upstairs, or just drop it. I didn't. "Did you say Rob was here?" She blinked once. Yeah. Why? Nothing, I shrugged. Just didn't know he was back in town. A small silence fell between us. She tilted her head slightly, like she was calculating how much I knew. Then she laughed, too lightly. Oh, I think his flight got delayed or something. He said he might leave later tonight instead. That was the moment, the exact moment I knew, because Rob hadn't said anything about a delay. His wife hadn't mentioned it. And when I texted him around noon about the headphones, he'd replied from the airport lounge, even sent a photo of his boarding pass as a joke. But Emily? She lied without flinching, without stammering, without even blinking. Everything about her demeanor was perfectly measured. Relaxed posture, casual tone, just enough detail to seem believable, not too much to look suspicious. She was good. I had to give her that, and maybe that's what hurt most. Not just the possibility that something was happening, but the realization that she was capable of crafting a lie with that much grace. That she had rehearsed this, thought it through, and executed it flawlessly. I didn't eat much that night, just pushed food around on my plate and listened as she talked about the upcoming fundraiser and the venue change and some coworkers' baby shower. Her voice floated around me, smooth and animated, like nothing had happened, like she wasn't just improvising an entire alternate version of reality. Eventually, she stood, kissed me on the cheek, and said she needed to go upstairs and send a few emails. I waited until I heard the bedroom door shut before walking back over to the table. The second glass of wine was still there, untouched since I arrived, still faintly warm. I picked it up and stared at the lipstick mark, the same shade as hers. I turned toward the hallway, stared at the door where the strange shoes had stood. Now gone. Removed. Hidden. She thought she had covered every trace. Almost. But it only takes one crack in the surface to expose the hollow underneath. That night, I didn't say anything. I kissed her goodnight. I even told her I loved her. But something inside me had already changed. A slow shift. A weight pressing against my ribs. Because even if she hadn't confessed anything, I had seen enough. Not proof. Not yet. But the beginning of a trail. Pair of unfamiliar shoes. A too convenient lie. And a woman who looked me in the eye with a smile, and lied so smoothly, I almost believed her. Almost. After that night, the night of the shoes and the lie told so easily it made my skin crawl. Something shifted in me. Not all at once. I didn't erupt or confront her or fall into pieces. No, it was quieter than that. Slower. A kind of unraveling that happened in the background of everything else. You know how when a thread comes loose on a shirt, and you pull it without thinking, and suddenly the whole seam gives way. That was me. That was my mind. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop replaying old moments. Things I'd forgotten, dismissed, or explained away because I trusted her. Because I wanted to. But now that I had a reason not to, the memories started lining up, one after another, like evidence at a crime scene I hadn't realized I'd walked into. Like how Emily had started taking her phone with her everywhere, even just to grab a glass of water from the kitchen. First, I figured it was normal. Everyone's attached to their phone these days. But then she started turning the screen away from me whenever I was nearby. Not every time. Just enough to make it obvious. She'd laugh at something and then instantly flip the phone over when I walked by. Or she'd go silent mid-text the second I entered the room. I remembered the first time I asked her about it. A few weeks before the shoes. She smiled and said, "It's just work stuff, boring emails." And I believed her, because that's what you do when you're married. You believe the person you've built a life with. I remembered her girls' nights, which had started off as monthly and slowly became weekly, then twice a week. At first, I was happy she had something that brought her joy. I didn't question it when she came home late, midnight, sometimes later. I'd be half asleep on the couch, and she'd slide in with some story about how they lost track of time at that wine bar near the lake. She always looked tired, her makeup slightly smudged, her hair tousled like she'd spent the night in wind tunnels or taxis or someone else's arms. God, how had I missed that? I remembered the first time I caught the scent of unfamiliar cologne on her coat. It was subtle, just a trace. Masculine, expensive, something spicy, Not mine. I said something then. Joked about it, even. New perfume. I asked, trying to keep it light. She didn't flinch. Just laughed and said, "Oh, probably brushed up against someone on the train. It was packed." And she waved it off with that smile. That same smile she wore when she lied to me about Rob being in our house. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Then there were the passwords. Suddenly everything had one. Her phone. Her laptop. Even our shared Netflix account had a passcode now. She said she was locking things because of a security breach at her work, some company-wide protocol. I didn't press her. I never did. But after the shoes, all those little changes stopped feeling like coincidence. They felt coordinated, calculated. One night, maybe a week after the shoes, I woke up and found her sitting on the edge of the bed in the dark, just sitting there, her back to me. The light from her phone screen lit up the side of her face, and for a second, I thought she was crying. I asked if she was okay. She jumped. That startled, guilty kind of jump, like a kid caught stealing cookies. She turned off her phone fast and mumbled, "Couldn't sleep, just scrolling." When I asked what she was looking at, she didn't answer. She just climbed back into bed and turned her back to me. That's when I realized how often she'd been doing that, turning away from me in her sleep. I used to think it was just comfort, habit, but now it felt like a symbol, like there was a whole world she was facing that I wasn't allowed to see. I remembered one time months ago, maybe longer, when I caught a glimpse of a message on her phone. We were at brunch and her phone buzzed next to the mimosa glass. She picked it up fast, but not before I caught a flash of the screen. A message preview from someone saved only as an initial R. It read, "Last night was everything. I can't stop thinking about it." I didn't say anything. I didn't want to seem jealous. I told myself it had to be from a friend, maybe something innocent, maybe a joke. She was laughing at something I'd said, and I couldn't bring myself to break the moment. I buried it. God, I buried so much. Looking back now, that message wasn't just a red flag. It was a flare, fired directly in my face. I chose not to see it. That's the worst part of betrayal, I think. The way it makes you complicit in your own undoing. You replay every moment you let something slide, every time you silenced your gut to keep the peace, every lie you accepted because the truth would have hurt too much. And all of it makes you wonder, was I weak or just loyal? Some nights I told myself I was overthinking it, that I was becoming paranoid. But then she'd come home with that look, the distracted kind, the faraway one, like her body was there, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Someone else. Once she got a call while we were watching TV. She paused the show and walked out to the patio. It wasn't a long call, 3 minutes, tops. But when she came back in, her mood was different. Brighter, lighter, like whoever was on the other end had just refilled her soul in a way I hadn't in months. I asked who it was. "Linda," she said, without missing a beat. Of course it was. The lies were always dressed in names I trusted. Even her irritation had changed. She used to get annoyed with me like couples do, the harmless kind. Dishes in the sink. Forgotten errands. But now her anger had a new sharpness. A low-grade contempt. She snapped at simple questions. Rolled her eyes when I asked if she wanted to do something together. Treated me like a burden. Like I was in the way of something she hadn't told me she wanted. I started noticing how much time she spent getting ready before she ran errands. Not in a casual way. Not in a leggings and hoodie kind of way. We're talking full makeup, styled hair, perfume I hadn't smelled in months. All to run to Target. Right? And yet, through all of this, I didn't say a word. I didn't snoop. I didn't demand to see her phone or track her location. I just watched. Quietly. Like someone watching a storm roll in. Knowing there's nothing you can do to stop it. It's strange. The things your brain filters out to protect your heart. I used to believe denial was a weakness, but now I see it differently. Sometimes denial is survival. It's your brain saying, "Not yet. You're not ready to know." Not really. But now I knew. I couldn't pretend anymore. The shoes, the wine, the shift in her behavior, the mask that never slipped. I didn't have hard evidence. Not yet. No photos, no confession, no damning proof. But my instincts weren't guessing. They were remembering, reassembling, and what they were building was a story I didn't want to finish. But I knew I would. I had to. So I waited, watched, and kept pulling the thread. Because somewhere in all this silence, I had a feeling I'd find the truth. And when I did, I wouldn't look away again. It didn't come with a dramatic reveal. No screaming. No catching her in someone else's arms. No motel parking lot confrontation. The moment that confirmed it all was quieter than that. Ordinary even, but maybe that's what made it hurt more. The ease of it. The simplicity. It was a Thursday evening. I remember because Emily had been on edge all day. And when she's like that, she talks more than usual. Fills the air with noise to keep the silence from asking questions. She told me she had a video call at 7, something about planning a networking retreat. Just a few work people, she said, almost offhandedly. You don't need to worry about dinner. I'll eat after. I told her no problem, and I meant it. By then, I had stopped asking, stopped reacting. I just listened. We ate separately that night. She took her glass of wine upstairs, laptop in one hand, her phone in the other. I stayed downstairs and let the evening settle around me like dust. I didn't go looking for anything. I wasn't plotting or digging or playing detective. If I'm honest, I think some part of me still hoped I was wrong. That all the signs were just anxiety, bad timing, misread gestures. But the thing about hope is that it becomes a liability when it outweighs the facts. About an hour later, she came back down. Calm. Smiling. Said the meeting went long, but she was going to shower and read for a bit. I said sure. I watched her disappear down the hallway like everything was normal. Then I saw it, her laptop. She'd left it open on the couch. It wasn't like her to do that. And I swear to you, I didn't plan to touch it. I didn't sit down with the intention of checking up on her. I only meant to move it, to set it on the side table, close the lid, and walk away. But then I saw the screen. She hadn't logged out. Messages were still up. A chat window open. Muted, discreet, almost buried under her email tabs. The name at the top, Ryan M. Not someone I recognized. Not from work. Not a friend. Just a first name, last initial, the way you save someone you don't want others to identify too easily. My hand hovered over the trackpad for a second. 1 second. That's all it took for something in me to say, look. So I did. There weren't many messages. Just a few. But they said enough. Ryan, can't stop thinking about last weekend. That hotel tub should be illegal. Then a photo. A mirror selfie. Low hotel lighting. Her reflection. Unmistakably Emily. Wrapped in a towel, damp hair, smirking into the lens. She wasn't looking directly at the camera. Her eyes were turned, smiling toward someone standing just off frame. The timestamp? From a Saturday she said she was in Chicago with her sister. Some spa weekend. There was no sister in that photo. Just her. And Ryan. There was a folder open behind the chat, minimized but not hidden. Labeled work trip. I clicked it. Inside, booking confirmations, train receipts, digital key codes. Everything tied to a boutique hotel downtown. 1 room, 2 guests. Charged to a card I didn't recognize. She hadn't made a mistake. She had built a system, an alternate life. And she'd built it carefully, quietly, with enough detail to avoid suspicion but not enough to ever expect discovery. My chest tightened. Not with rage, with clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't scream. It just settles. Like fog pulling back from a field to reveal the damage beneath. I closed the laptop gently, placed it back exactly how she left it. Then I sat there in the quiet, listening to the water running upstairs as she showered. Humming a tune I didn't recognize. She was always humming something lately. Songs I didn't know. Moods I couldn't place. Like she was always just one step outside the life we were supposed to be living together. And now I knew why. I thought about confronting her. Right there. Marching upstairs, throwing the laptop down, demanding answers. But what would be the point? She already had her answers. She'd made her choices. All I would get were excuses or worse, apologies she didn't mean. No, I didn't need her to tell me the truth anymore. I had seen it, felt it, confirmed it, and suddenly, I realized I wasn't angry. That surprised me. I always thought if this ever happened, I'd lose it, break something, shout, fall apart. But instead, I felt this strange kind of stillness, like I'd finally stopped treading water after weeks of barely staying afloat. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, stood in front of the fridge and stared at a photo we'd pinned there last Christmas. One of those instant prints from a holiday party. We were smiling in it, but I could see now how fake it looked. My arm around her waist, her eyes already drifting somewhere else. The photo had been trying to warn me. So had the message. The shoes. The wine. I just hadn't wanted to listen. When she came back into the room later, hair damp, wrapped in a robe, acting like nothing had changed, I didn't say a word. I asked how her meeting went. She gave me some vague summary about guest speakers and RSVP counts and how stressful everything was. She poured another glass of wine, sat next to me, scrolled on her phone while I flipped through TV channels I wasn't watching. We were two people occupying the same space, sharing none of it. I studied her hands. The way her fingers moved across the screen, delicate and fast, like she was always somewhere else. They were the same hands that used to hold mine when we were young and uncertain, before routine replaced curiosity. She didn't notice me watching her. She didn't notice much anymore. Later that night, I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling. She fell asleep quickly, her breathing soft and steady. I turned away. I couldn't remember the last time I had kissed her goodnight without hesitation. Couldn't remember the last time her voice made me feel anchored instead of adrift. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't just break your trust. It rewrites your past. It takes every memory you thought was safe and stains it, just enough to make you question whether any of it was real. But in that questioning, something else is born, freedom. Because once you stop needing someone to explain why they hurt you, you start reclaiming the part of yourself that stopped asking for what you deserve. That night, I didn't sleep much. But I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't panic. I made a decision. I would not confront her. Not yet. I would not beg for honesty from someone who had already traded it for comfort. Instead, I would watch, observe, prepare. Because when someone chooses to lie that beautifully, that carefully, that confidently, you don't take their story apart with fury. You dismantle it with silence. And piece by piece I would. The day after I found the messages, I woke up before Emily. I lay still for a few minutes, listening to the rhythm of her breathing beside me, wondering how many mornings I'd spent pretending not to notice the silence growing between us. This morning was different. Something inside me had changed. Not a spark of rage or sorrow. Nothing dramatic like the movies make you expect. Just a flat calm. A sense that I was now operating on a different level, no longer reacting, just observing. Like I'd finally slipped beneath the surface of the storm. I got out of bed carefully, quietly. My movements deliberate. She stirred but didn't wake. I took a shower, made coffee, and stood by the kitchen window watching the world go on. As if nothing inside these walls was quietly breaking apart. Emily came down later in her robe, sleep still clinging to her eyes. She kissed me on the cheek, asked if we had almond milk, and started listing off her plans for the day. Yoga, a video call, possibly grabbing drinks with a coworker. I listened. I nodded. I smiled in the right places. She didn't notice a thing. And why would she? I hadn't changed a beat. I was still the same man standing in the kitchen with my mug in hand and a thoughtful expression on my face. But something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer her audience. I wasn't trying to hold this together anymore. I had let go silently. That day, I moved money into a private account. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to build a cushion. Enough to not be stuck. I scanned the documents I would need, passport, birth certificate, the deed to the condo I owned before we married. I uploaded everything to a secure folder, one she couldn't access. Then I cleared my browser history. Later that afternoon, she sent me a photo of a dress, asking which one looked better for her fundraiser dinner. I told her the red one. She replied with a heart emoji and a "can't wait to show you tonight" even though we both knew I wasn't invited. I wasn't part of that world anymore. I was furniture, something to lean on when needed, invisible the rest of the time. That evening I cooked dinner. Pasta, garlic bread, roasted vegetables, her favorite. She came home around 7, kissed me again, said I was too good to her. She poured wine, complimented the seasoning like nothing was wrong. We sat across from each other, the candles flickering gently, like the scene of a healthy marriage. She asked about my day. I told her it was fine. She asked if I wanted to go away for a weekend soon. Somewhere quiet, she said. Just us. I almost laughed, but instead I said, that sounds nice. She smiled, pleased, probably with herself. Later, when we were lying in bed, she curled into me like she used to, her hand on my chest, fingers tracing idle patterns on my shirt. She kissed my neck softly and whispered, I'm glad we're okay. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence was now my strongest language. She drifted off within minutes. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of her body pressed into mine, knowing it wasn't real. This closeness, this illusion. It was theater, the closing act of a play she didn't know I'd already walked out of. Over the next few days, I began to detach in subtle, surgical ways. I stopped buying groceries for the house, just enough to notice, not enough to raise questions. I canceled the monthly subscription we shared for streaming, claimed it was a billing issue. I took a few books from the shelf that mattered to me and stashed them in my car. A hoodie here, a pair of sneakers there. Little things I could explain away if she noticed. She didn't. She had no idea I was packing up my life while standing right beside her. The calm I felt during those days wasn't numbness. It was clarity. I wasn't drowning anymore. I wasn't even angry. I had gone beyond that, past the point of confrontation or tears. It wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. And every quiet decision I made, every backup file, every shifted belonging, every dollar moved, was a piece of myself being reclaimed. One morning, I found myself watching her across the room as she sat cross-legged on the floor. Sorting through a box of photos for a wedding scrapbook, she said she was finally going to finish. Photos from 5 years ago. Smiles we no longer wore. Vacations we no longer talked about. I watched her hold a picture of us at the lake. Our arms wrapped around each other, faces sunlit and stupidly happy. She held it in her hands for a long time. Too long. Then she tucked it back into the box and said, we really should go back there sometime. I nodded. That evening, I started looking at listings for a place to live. I wanted something small, simple, close to the ocean if possible. I didn't want to live in our house after I left. I didn't want to occupy a space haunted by pretending. She kept asking about summer plans. Friends we hadn't seen in months, flights we'd never booked. I told her I'd check my schedule. She smiled and kissed my cheek again. I wondered how many times she'd kissed me the same day she kissed someone else. The thought didn't cut as deep as it used to, maybe because I already knew the answer. One day, while cleaning the hallway closet, I found an old shoebox that had been pushed to the back. Inside were scraps of paper, old receipts, torn notebook pages. At first, I thought it was junk. Then I saw her handwriting. They were drafts of letters. Unsent. Unfinished. One read, Alex, I don't know how to tell you this without breaking something we can't fix. I love you, but I think I might be lost, and I don't know how to come back. Another, you were never the problem. That's the part that hurts the most. Some weren't addressed at all, just half thoughts, doodles in the margins. One said, in lowercase, if I leave, I won't get to keep the good parts, and I don't know if I can live without those. I sat on the floor for a long time, reading them. She had been planning to go long before I knew anything. She had practiced the goodbye. But then what? Did she change her mind? Get cold feet? Or was she just waiting for the right exit? Maybe she still is. It didn't hurt, reading those notes. It confirmed something I already knew. This ending wasn't mine alone. She had seen it coming too. She just didn't know I'd beat her to the door. That night, I deleted the vacation folder from our shared drive. The one she hadn't touched in months. She didn't notice. I stopped kissing her goodnight. She stopped asking why. And just like that, the distance we had both been cultivating for so long became a full-grown canyon. One we crossed only to perform the scenes we'd memorized by now. The dinner talk, the occasional laughter, the ghost of int Macy we summoned when we needed to believe we were still okay. But I wasn't pretending anymore. I was packing my silence into a suitcase. And soon I'd be gone. You'd be surprised how easy it is to disappear from your own life if you take your time. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a process, a quiet erosion, the kind you don't notice unless you're looking directly at it. And that's the beauty of it. Emily wasn't looking. She was too busy maintaining the version of us that still worked for her. The one where I stayed still, predictable, loyal, present but fading, exactly how she needed me to be. And so I began to vanish. Not in dramatic ways. No suitcases by the door, no whispered phone calls, no secret rendezvous. I disappeared in small, forgettable acts. I stopped buying the brand of laundry detergent we both liked. I unsubscribed from our shared streaming services. She thought it was billing errors. I removed my name from delivery apps. Unlinked my phone from the Bluetooth speaker in the kitchen. The changes were invisible at first. So was I. I started moving things out of the house slowly. A sweater here. A favorite pen. A watch my grandfather gave me that I hadn't worn in years. I kept a small box in the trunk of my car. A makeshift time capsule of my life before it was tied to hers. She didn't notice. Not even when my books began to disappear from the shelves or when one of the guitars vanished from its stand in the office. She was too busy, I guess. Or too distracted. Maybe she thought I was cleaning up, decluttering, trying to impress her. One of those silent attempts to win back affection. The truth was I was making room. Not in the house, in myself. Each item I took back was a reminder that I hadn't disappeared. Not completely. One afternoon, while she was at a Pilates class, I opened her laptop, not to search for more proof I didn't need it anymore. I already had what I needed. *TS, backups, duplicates saved to a flash drive. It wasn't for confrontation. It was for closure. For myself. I skimmed through her browser history, her emails, her photos. None of it surprised me anymore. The hotel confirmations were more frequent than I thought. There was a recurring reservation under a different name. I suppose she thought it added a layer of cleverness. There were messages, always neatly buried in folders or archived with clinical precision. Nothing wild or romantic. Just efficient. Cold. But it was a folder on her desktop that stopped me. Untitled. Inside were 5 different versions of the same letter. Farewell note. Some were drafts. Some written months ago. Some only a few days old. They read like rehearsals. One said, "Alex, I know you'll hate me, and I deserve it, but I couldn't live a life I didn't recognize anymore. You deserve someone who chooses you completely. I haven't been that person for a long time." Another, "This isn't about someone else. It's about who I became when I stayed." And then the most recent one, dated 2 days earlier, short, raw, unedited. "I don't love you the way I should. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner." I stared at that line for a long time. I think part of me was waiting to feel shattered again. But I didn't. There was no new pain in it. Only confirmation. She had been planning her escape. Maybe she still was. But she didn't know I'd already beat her to it. Not physically, not yet. But emotionally, I was long gone. And reading those letters didn't break me. If anything, they freed me. They made it real. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't something she tripped into one drunken night and regretted. This was a choice, a long, slow migration away from me. So I kept going. I called an old friend who lived in a coastal town a few hours away. Someone who owed me a favor and had a small guest cottage behind his house. Nothing fancy. A single bedroom. A view of the water. Quiet. He said I could have it by the end of the month. No questions asked. That night, Emily cooked dinner for the first time in weeks. Pasta and roasted vegetables. The kind of meal I usually made. She played the same jazz station from that night, the one with the 2 wine glasses. Felt like theater. She set the table with candles, poured 2 glasses, smiled like we were newlyweds trying to reconnect. "We've both been so busy," she said casually. "I miss nights like this." I nodded. She talked more than usual, filling every silence with updates. About work, friends, how we should take a weekend trip. She even mentioned the lake house again, said she'd looked at rentals. I asked her why. She paused, just for a second, then smiled. "Because we need a reset, don't you think?" I wanted to ask her who she was trying to convince, me or herself, but I didn't. Instead, I watched her carefully. Every smile, every gesture, every calculated pause between words. She was good at this, at keeping the surface polished while the floorboards rotted beneath us. She didn't know I'd read the letters. She didn't know I'd seen the reservations. She didn't know I had already stepped out of this life with both feet and left only the outline of myself behind. That night, while she showered, I stood at the bedroom window and stared into the dark yard. I thought about how many more nights I'd have to pretend, how many more scenes I'd have to perform before I could finally walk away without looking back. 2 weeks. That was the plan. Give her space to make her next move. If she wanted out, I'd give her the clean exit she was too scared to make. If she didn't, I'd still leave, but I wouldn't owe her an explanation, because at this point, there was nothing left to explain. One by one, I closed every joint account. I signed off of family plans, removed my name from car insurance, scheduled mail forwarding for a P.O. box she didn't know existed. I even left her the house. I didn't want it. Let her keep the kitchen she decorated and the office she used to hide her double life. Let her keep the lavender candles and the wine rack and the framed photos of a marriage we were both pretending to still live in. I didn't want any of it. I just wanted peace. And I was almost there. The final detail came unexpectedly. One evening, while clearing out an old drawer, I found a picture of us. Framed, faded, taken during our first year together. We were standing on a beach, wind in our faces, sunburned and laughing. I almost didn't recognize us. It wasn't sadness I felt, not nostalgia either. It was grief, for the people we used to be, for the version of love we once managed to hold without dropping it. But I didn't want that version back. I didn't want the version of us that lived in memories. I wanted freedom, and I was building it piece by quiet piece. By the time Emily finally noticed I had changed, I'd be gone